Good evening, everyone. It's Ken Washington here at Water's Edge, following up with you guys here. Actually, catch up video on some things. I know I've been busy here the last couple of weeks, attending multiple events. I was at a fundraiser a couple of weeks ago, and several people were asking what's going on Lake Houston, who were familiar with the project with the Harris County Housing Authority. And of course, I told them that as of late, the project with the Harris County Housing Authority was halted. You know, they were not seeking any further development with that project, but they're not identifying what they're doing with the property since they've declined to sell it on 4 different occasions to the Humble ISD. So basically, it's a limbo type deal. No one knows what's going on with the project, but there is concern because there are federal dollars on the table that the county has received that they can bypass the state for the most part in some measures to fund projects. There are still some other things that have to happen, like of course there has to be an agreement with water, and the only place you're gonna get water unless you're building the whole deal is you have to agree, you follow up with either the MUD or the city, which neither one of those things have happened with any form of an agreement to come to terms with water, how it will supply any form of a project out there at the View at Lake Houston, which right now the project is back in the holding pattern. I know that the residents over at Lake Shore and Stillwater and so on are concerned about it, just like we are here at Water's Edge, trying to find out what's going on, especially with all of the recent development up and down West Lake Houston and the Beltway. Here recently with the apartments, there's been a significant growth in apartments down the Beltway. I believe one of them, if I remember correctly, I need to pull it up later and probably do another video. I think one of those are low rent housing apartments. It's I believe like an elderly community or so on, which I think everyone's fine with. Everyone's fine with some of these retirement communities or elderly communities being built. They typically don't have the problems that the other communities built. Plus, it's something that's a benefit or need. But coming down West Lake Houston, I think where the concern is, especially when we start talking about schools. You know, you start talking about the conflict with public housing and schools, and we have a huge need for schools here in the Atascocita and Humble area, and we're not seeing that collaboration or that effort from the Harris County Housing Authority to resolve this conflict by selling that property that's been in dispute for so long. And of course, with the current structure of the Harris County Commissioners Court being 4-1, meaning 4 Democrats to 1 Republican, there's no support there, especially since they're pushing their own agenda with self-interest and projects here within the area and funding those using ARPA funds and CDBG funds, which is a concern. I know someone asked me before when I was speaking about one of these videos, I put my glasses on so I can see. They were asking me, you know, what is ARPA funds, or what is about the ARPA or American Rescue Plan Act, which was funded by the federal government. You know, it's basically premium paid for essential workers, investment in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And that is something that I think some of our MUDs were learning about. They can use ARPA funds to help fund some of these projects along the roadway along West Lake Houston, where we need more development, and not spending that money out of the residents' pocket that's coming directly from the MUD. It's federal money that they're looking into now. So if you haven't reached out to your MUD to see if they're invested in that, reach out to them, please. Also, the CDBG funds were a huge issue with us when we were talking about this housing authority project at the View of Lake Houston, because HUD, the primary federal objective of the CDBG program, is to develop viable urban communities by providing decent housing and suitable living environment, and through expand economic opportunities, principally for persons or low and moderate incomes. Now, I think everyone agrees that there should be some development for public housing or low-rent housing, whatever, for those residents that need it. It's a matter of where. And since there's no need out here, we're not sure why the Harris County Housing Authority was looking at building out here along West Lake Houston, or actually anywhere along the Beltway. Public housing is by its own definition, is an urban community development project, not rural. And most of West Lake Houston is rural area. Hence, it's out away from the city. And not sure why the Harris County Housing Authority is not focused on building in the city where there's a huge need for public housing because of the larger, more dense population. If residents in rural communities have a desire for housing to be built, they can always reach out to the housing authority to kind of do that. And that's not what's happening. Commissioner Ellis and Hidalgo, Judge Hidalgo and Commissioner Ellis and Commissioner Garcia was just not hearing that from our previous conversations. And that's why I want to re-engage with again to see what they're doing, not just along with the view of Lake Houston, but some of the other areas that seem to be prime real estate around the Beltway in West Lake Houston that kind of concern me, especially with the number of residents out here who invested in their homes, who invested in this community, and are not seeing a collaboration between the county with the needs we're asking for, and places like Humble ISD, who's trying to basically build schools that are viable. I did see something else that concerned me. Of course, anything that's on the agenda with the Harris County Commissioners Court always concerns me where there are no details there. You don't know what they're doing with the county money. You don't know what they're doing with ARPA funds that are coming from the federal government for the general public, where CDBG funds are going for housing. I know that I mentioned previously when I saw them funding training events and courses and classes across the country, but specifically in California, I brought up in the court, why are they funding training out there from county employees, especially since the Governor Newsom in California, about a year and a half ago, said that no government or state employees could travel to the state of Texas for training. And I was wondering why Harris County was sending employees out there. Not only were they sending employees, we were paying for it out of our taxpayer dollars, since he didn't want Texas residents out there, especially since the same training can be conducted here in Harris County or in Texas somewhere. So it made no sense. But I did see something of interest that came up in the last agenda. Came up under the block under sheriff, and it was labeled 187. It says requesting for approval of a pilot project agreement with the Houston Museum of African American Culture and the California Lawyers for the Arts to collaborate to provide art programs for residents at the county jail at no cost to the county. I have no idea why the Harris County Commissioners Court or even the sheriff is considering a cultural arts program from California to be conducted with inmates at the jail. I have no idea, especially since there are other things that we need money in Harris County invested in, especially things like schools, okay? So, and of course, funding law enforcement, but not funding this project. This makes no sense to me. These are some of the things every time I start looking into what's on the agenda or find out what they're funding, it seems to come up every time. And that's why I encourage the residents along West Lake Houston to go down and observe what's going on at the Harris County Commissioners Court. And even reaching out to Commissioner Ramsey, you can ask questions, even though, of course, a lot of these issues that come up on the table, he's probably scratching his head just as much as we are when he's in these meetings. So I don't know. Can't answer that. But I do plan on going down there here either next week or week after the next meeting to see what's going on, even if I don't speak, which brings up something else. There's a lot of conversation every time you go down to the Commissioners Court from Judge Hidalgo and Commissioner Ellis and Commissioner Garcia about inclusion. And when they talk inclusion, they want people to come down and participate and agree on the projects that they want to talk about. But if you don't agree with their project, they want to hush you and silence you and not hear what you have to say. So it's only inclusion if you are talking about or supporting something they want you to talk about or agree with their project, which of course concerns me always and every time I go down there. And they've shortened the speaking part. They shortened the time you have to speak to 1 minute. And it's been like that for a few years now. Whereas you go somewhere like Montgomery County or Waller County, whatever, you speak for 3 minutes, which is typically normal. 3 minutes is a long time to talk and get a lot out. But basically, they're not giving the community the opportunity to go down and voice their opinion or concerns about these issues that are coming up. And even if you do get to speak for a minute's not a lot to voice why you disagree or even agree with a project. Um, that's something that probably needs to be brought up more and more. I'm not sure how far we will be able to get with the current breakdown of the Commissioner's Court, but at least we get somewhere. And of course, there's been a change, but with the current legislation from the Texas legislature that just passed regarding the structure of the approval authority basically for the voting in the county. Now, this previous election, Judge Hidalgo appointed someone who's not from Harris County. Heck, he's not even from Texas. He came from Washington, D.C. to oversee the elections. And of course, they guaranteed us we were going to have these fair elections, which we did not. There was a bunch of chaos going on. So the Texas legislature stepped in specifically to address that. And of course, I'm sure at the next Harris County Commissioners Court, we'll hear more about that. But I've spoke about a lot of issues, a lot of things going on. Number one, there hasn't been much talk about what's coming out of the Harris County Housing Authority or the Commissioners Court in regards to any development on the view at Lake Houston adjacent to Lakeshore subdivision. They've been very hush-hush, but it concerns me because there's been a lot of federal funds approved for different projects and positions that have been expanded at the community development, of course, the Harris County Housing Authority, but no one identifies it. Two, there's a lot of concern with things going on that are being approved for these federal dollars that we could use elsewhere in the county that definitely affect us here in the rural area that we should be concerned about. And of course, staying engaged with the Humble ISD. Of course, the elections just passed, but trying to find out what they're doing with supporting Humble ISD for property that we need to purchase and to get our kids in these schools so they're not overrun with just due to large populations. So I'll get you guys another update soon. Sorry it took so long. Hey, it's Memorial Day weekend. I hope everyone has a safe Memorial Day weekend. Let's not forget the sacrifices that those who came before us made so we can even have these type of conversations. So I pray for you and your family. Hope you guys enjoyed the weekend. Be safe, and I'll speak with you soon. Ken Washington, Water's Edge, and I'm out.